Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the migration process webinar that we have this morning. I'm just going to give a minute just to let a couple more people join, and then we'll get started. Okay, I think we can continue and people can join as they need to. So yes, as mentioned, we are going to be running through the migration process this morning. So for people that are currently on Prospect CRM version 6 that are looking to migrate to Prospect 365. So first of all, just to introduce myself, I'm Louise, I'm Head of Sales at Prospect, and I'll be taking you through today's webinar and just talking to you around the migration process. Just a quick agenda. We're just going to be having a quick introduction to what it means to migrate to 365 from version 6, what things will actually migrate, what we kind of might need to do some work on to get it migrated over, and that kind of process. Moving on then to the test drive process itself and how that actually works, and how we test the system and so on. And then actually how you guys can then start migrating your system over to 365. So first of all, it is worth noting that the migration is exactly that. It is not an upgrade of version 6. The system itself is been completely rewritten from the ground up using new web technologies. So we've also kind of taken a real focus in the CRM itself and concentrated on real stock aware features and you know, stuff around stock and being able to service your customers when you are selling things out of a warehouse to other B2B businesses. There's a new user interface, which is actually accessed via a browser, so you can access it anytime, anywhere. It's hosted on Microsoft Azure, again, bringing into how we have used new web technologies throughout the database, leaving the legacy features behind in version 6. So being hosted on Microsoft Azure, it does mean that the database itself is no longer hosted on your server. That obviously means there's no onus on you to kind of make sure the server is up to spec for the system and any upgrades, but it also allows us to better support our customers and provide more database monitoring alongside that. And also talking about ongoing upgrades in 365, we actually are releasing every 4 weeks at the moment. Being on version 6, you actually don't get those upgrades, you know, even if we do them, you know, it takes us about 6 months to 12 months to actually get the upgrades done, and then a longer process to get them rolled out to our customer base as well. So there's a lot more benefits from being in a kind of a hosted software as a service platform like Prospect 365. There's more information about actually the migration process itself for our customers. The website is just down here. It's prospectsoft.com/migrate, and we also have what's new in Prospect 365 as well, so you can actually see some of the new features that we have in the new system. So what does that mean for you guys in terms of actually getting on to Prospect 365? So there are certain features, obviously using new technologies and having it being rewritten from the ground up. There are some certain features that we haven't included in 365 that were in version 6. Most of those things are things that customers weren't using, or just our legacy software that we couldn't migrate over for good reasons. So things like the Outlook Contact Sync feature that you have in version 6. Telephony is also one of those features that we have not migrated over to 365, mainly because most customers of ours use legacy phone systems, you know, when you actually have a telephone on the desk rather than having a web-based solution. And there is some, if you do have a web-based phone system, there is some integration there, just not the full amount that you have in version 6 with the telephony. And there's also some restrictions around complex reporting, including calculated fields. Again, there's not a great deal of our customers that have those, but there are other options if you do. And one of the reasons for obviously removing some of the complexity around reporting is about providing our customers with the ability to actually write reports themselves within Prospect 365. And there's a whole report builder tool within the system. Obviously, if we made that too complex, we'd be back in a situation where our customers couldn't write their own reports and would have to, get our consultants to do that for you, which is the current situation with version 6 reporting. Certain custom items as well that our customers have and have built up along the way, these will not migrate. So these are things like the bespoke search and replace reports that we have for documents, custom fields and tabs that we've created specifically for you, and some specific reports that we've also created for you along the way. So those kind of things will take some reviewing and consideration before we progress with the migration for you. We have different customers that have different levels of those things. Some customers don't have any bespoke or custom items. There are some customers that have a bit, and some customers that do have quite a lot of bespoke that we would need to review prior to any migration project. So that brings us on to actually how we go about reviewing your current version 6 system, ready for or in preparation for a migration to Prospect 365. So as I was mentioning, there are some things that are automated. So all the data that you currently have stored in our standard fields, so customer data, so all of your customers will migrate, all of the sales history, all of the contacts and all of that kind of standard categorization of those contacts and so on will migrate during the actual migration process. So when we take a copy of your version 6 database and we run it through the migration process, those data fields and the data within those fields will migrate automatically during that process. There are some things then that we say are semi-automated. So for instance, there are documents within your database that you've created as standard templates. So whether that be a quote document, proposal document, return material authorizations, those items will migrate. We do run a bit of a process on those to check for any errors. So when I was mentioning earlier, search and replace fields for any bespoke information that you want pulled through to one of those documents, they may not migrate. So we do have to do a bit of a check on some documents, and some of them may need some work. So there's kind of a semi-automated process in migrating those documents, again, which we would just review with you. And then we come on to the actual the rewrite of some of the items within your current version 6 database. So these are things like your custom tabs, your fields, the things that we have created specifically for you throughout your use of version 6, whether that's a bespoke tab to hold some other information aside from the standard fields that we have, or whether it's a bespoke report bringing together key information that you want to see about your customers, and also any custom plugins that you might have as well. So any add-ons or plugins that we've created for you over the course of version 6, those would not migrate, and we would need to look at rewriting. And that is essentially again down to the rewrite of the database, where we have now used new web technologies, modern up-to-date technologies that are supported and are the most efficient for running a database. So there are just some certain things that we would need to review and possibly rewrite during the migration process. So the actual process of the migration itself and identifying those areas that won't migrate or might semi-migrate, we actually go through a bit of a process in terms of identifying those and reviewing them with you. So initially, when you want to start looking at a migration, the first step that we actually do is we get onto your server, we take a copy of your current version 6 database as it is at that moment in time, and we run that through the migration process. So you can continue to use your version 6 database day to day as normal. We take the copy and we run that through the migration and set you up with what we call a test drive database. So it's basically a sandbox environment where your users can carry on version 6, but you can then go ahead and test the features and have a look at 365 with your data, and just have a look and see if the solution itself is right for you before we move ahead with the process. So with the setup of that test drive, we also then would arrange a bit of a demonstration with you, just to show you some of the standard features and how 365 differs from version 6. So that is kind of the first step in setting up the actual test environment and getting you to have a look and feel demonstration of that system. And from there, if you like the system, you think it would be good to continue with looking at the migration process, we actually then carry out some analysis on your database. And we typically do this at the time that we set the test drive up. We actually run scripts on your current version 6 database to extract data, specifically your surrounding items that we don't class as standard and possibly will not migrate. And then that information, once we run those scripts, is populated into some spreadsheets. We actually then review that ourselves in-house, tidy it up a little bit, and then we send them through to the customers to go through and review each of the items on there, and give you a chance to actually say whether you use the things anymore. So we actually, on the document section of that analysis, we say when the last time that document was actually used by somebody. If it was used 6 months to 12 months ago, it's probably likely we don't want to spend the time and effort or any of your budget on migrating those things that you're not actually using anymore. And this actually brings in quite a key area of a migration process for a lot of our customers. Our typical customer has been with us, a number of years, and this gives us a good point to actually start looking at the CRM system again, as if you were implementing a new one, because essentially that is what we are doing, and it gives us a chance to kind of review the processes that you go through, whether something was put in place years ago to support a particular process which has evolved over time, and you're now trying to shoehorn those bespoke elements into that new process that you've configured internally, and businesses do evolve over time, processes change, things typically end up being done historically, and probably don't need to be done anymore, or could be done in a better way. So it really gives us an opportunity to have a look at the items that we have put in place for you over those years, and see whether there's a better way of doing it, whether it's still needed, and also it gives us an opportunity to kind of look at those historical plugins and reports and things that we've done for you that probably are now inefficient in terms of your internal processes, but also inefficient in a database scenario. Using old technologies can slow databases down, that it's not very supportable, so it just gives us a chance to get the system into a nice scenario of this migration, and be able to kind of rejuvenate that system that you've had for over a number of years. Things change, and so we should have a look at the system and take that as an opportunity to look at rejuvenation as if you were implementing a new CRM database. So once we've done that analysis, and together we have reviewed that, so we will review the results with you. We can help you through understanding what each element is and if you actually do use it, or if those things can be improved. So we do a whole review process on that analysis, and again at that point, if you still think the system is right, it can do all the things that you're hoping it can do, we will then, after that review, go through and put together a project plan. So what the migration would look like to you. It typically is similar in some elements for customers, but there are always different elements that we need to migrate over for different customers. So we do put a specific project plan together and a migration plan for customers on a per customer basis. And that project will include, possible timescales depending on the amount of work that we need to do, and any costs associated with the migration in terms of the rewrites of the reports, tabs, and any other custom plugins and features that you have. So all of that will be put into a document for you, and we will propose that this is what we will do to get you migrated over to 365, and this is the cost of doing that migration. So then obviously we will pass that over to you. You can review that, and at this stage, again, it's a point for you to either, based on that, carry on with the migration, and we'll actually get the project booked in, or maybe it's not right at that time, for one or a few reasons, and we can put it on hold again. But it just kind of lays out the plan we would go through and what the migration will actually mean for you. So if you're happy then after that to proceed onto the actual migration stage, this is where we actually go and start building your system within Prospect 365. And we do that still on the test drive environment, so you will still have your version 6 running and working as normal while we build the features and the custom tabs and so on in the actual test drive, and that also allows you at each point of the project and when we do some work in the test drive, allows you to actually test that and make sure you're happy prior to actually moving forward with a go live plan. So again, all in a sandbox environment. During the project stage, we also rerun the test drive a few times as well, just to make sure with the changes we're making, the upgrade process is still going to work and not come up against any hurdles, and it also allows us to actually run the migration from your server and give you a timescale of how long your database might be down whilst we run the migration. So after the project stage, once we've completed all our work and got all of your custom areas over and migrated, you will go through the user acceptance testing. So you will test the system from start to finish. Obviously, we will carry out our technical testing in-house and make sure the database is efficient, it's running well, there's no errors and so on. But from a user point of view, you need to test the database to make sure it is covering all bases that you currently do in your version 6 database. You don't find any errors. And that is something that we can't test for you. Obviously, you know your processes and your business way better than we do. So it will give you a chance to what we call the user acceptance testing stage, where you at some point will come to the end of the testing and say, no, these things need to be done, and we review the feedback and do some changes and so on. Or we get to a stage where you're happy to then proceed and actually book in a migration date. So we will actually then, from that point of view, that is when we will actually run the new test drive from your server, which will indicate how long the actual migration process itself will take. Typically for people with smaller databases, we can do that in an evening. So we will kick the migration off at 5 o'clock when all of your users are out of the system. And the next day we will then have an up and running 365 system which your users will then log into. For people with a bit larger databases, and again, when we do the test migration, we'll be able to tell you what we think would be the right way forward. Some of our customers do the migration over a weekend period. So the migration will be kicked off on the Friday evening, and then by the Monday, your users will again have the 365 system to log into and move forward with. So once we know when you're going to go live and we've got all of that planned, we then book in the user training. Now, as I said, it's not an upgrade, it is a new system, so we do always suggest user training. We do have a wealth of online training facilities available on our Academy site, which will help, but we do recommend physical on-site training prior to the go live, just to make sure your users are fully up to date with what changes there are, how to use the system. Again, as I said, not an upgrade, it's a new system, so there are some changes. It is a change for your sales team, it is a different system for your sales and customer service teams and so on. So we do recommend the training, which we'll talk to you about during the project stage. But we typically would do that, no more than probably a week or two prior to the go live, just to make sure everyone remembers that training when they're ready to log into the system and start running with it. So that's our typical overview of the process for migration. Clearly, there will be some differences between customers and how long this process itself will take. But once we start the test drive process, we should be looking at, depending on how large the project stage is, a month, at minimum a month before you can actually migrate. But again, we can work those timescales out with you, and obviously alongside what your thoughts are and when you want to go live with the Prospect 365 solution. So how do you actually start this process? Some of you might have already been in touch and we are talking about it, maybe in the initial and early stages of talking about the migration for you. But essentially, after this webinar, if you would like to start the conversations up again, or start these initial conversations about the migration, and get the ball rolling, if you would contact our customer success team to discuss getting it started, they will be able to help you, initially set up that test drive environment and get a demonstration booked in. The contact number is on our website, and so is our help@prospectsoft.com email address, but they're just there for you. And again, we will be sending this recording out after the webinar finishes, so you will have those contact details. But please get in touch. We'll talk to you about the migration in more specific terms to you, and hopefully get you on the road to the migration onto Prospect 365, so you can start gaining benefits from the new features, the upgrades, the support, and all of that good stuff that comes along with migrating to 365. So we are there to guide you through each of the steps of the migration, starting with obviously the demonstration, which I've mentioned, and obviously advising you where possible on where things might be an issue, and so on. So we are there to guide you through that process, and we do work really closely with our customers who are migrating from version 6 to 365. It is a massive change, that there is going to be some hand holding after the migration as well, but as I said, we are there to guide you through all of those processes, from before you migrate, during the migration, and afterwards as well. We now have good processes in place. We have done this with a number of our version 6 customers already, so this is not a new process, and you should be in good hands with our customer success team, and the account managers at Prospect Soft. It's also worth noting as well, at this moment in time, we do have a bit of an offer on for version 6 customers that would like to migrate. If you agree and commit to a migration before Christmas, there is a 20% off of the subscription cost of 365 for your first year at the user count that you have at the moment. So if you want some more information about that particular offer, and if you are ready to kind of really progress with this before Christmas, then again, please contact us and we'll talk to you about that in a bit more detail. And again, hopefully that's a bit of a push to get you over if you've been thinking about it, and just not sure if now's the time. So yes, there is no harm in investigating. We can provide all your cost comparisons, because obviously there is a new pricing structure with the migration as well. So version 6 is an annually based renewal, and there is also upfront costs if you want to add users and modules and that sort of stuff as well. As I said, it's an annual invoice that you pay yearly. We send out the invoice. When you move to Prospect 365, that is actually a monthly subscription, and we have different levels, but it's £45 per user per month, which includes support, and that also allows you to kind of manage your user count as you progress with the system. So the minimum user count is 4, but you actually get the opportunity to add and remove users as you wish during your 12-month contract, at no additional charge. If you're adding new users, you would just start being charged the additional £45 for the next month once you've added a user. So there is some differences in cost, and that we can provide you with an actual breakdown of what you're paying currently, and if you migrated to 365, what you would be paying going forward. So it is worth just investigating it, seeing if commercially it's worth it as well, based on the benefits that you'll be seeing from the migration to the new software. And again, we'll help you through that process too, to understand what the benefits are for you. And during this migration process, until the point of the project stage, that there's no commitment commercially. It is just investigative process that we go through, and if there are some kind of stumbling blocks or red lines that mean you can't migrate, then we will obviously look at those and revisit with new features or costs and stuff later down the line. But worth investigating. There is no harm in that, just to see what the benefits could be for you, and we'll be happy to take you through that process and guide you through it, and get you onto the new system, which hopefully will give you loads of benefits in terms of features and support and upcoming upgrades and stuff like that as well. And if you do want some more information, obviously we have an online chat to us. We have a YouTube channel as well, which gives you some more information, some short videos about Prospect 365. We also have the online chat to us, so you can email, give us a call, or use the online chat to contact us. And we also have, as I mentioned earlier in the webinar, we have our Prospect Soft Academy, which is about training and specifically around 365 features. So this might give you a good insight into what you might expect from a migration, and once you're running with the system, what it might look like, and how those things are different from version 6. And it's also worth mentioning, along obviously with our being a web-based solution, a SaaS platform, and having these upgrades coming out every 4 weeks at the moment. Whilst the upgrades are, fixes and so on, a lot of the upgrades at the moment are around new features, and we rely heavily on our customer ideas for our upgrades, and we actually have an ideas portal for 365, which allows our customers to kind of add, I guess, wish list items, which are reviewed monthly by our development, our DevOps team, who actually are in charge of these upgrades and what goes in them. So we do review that. You can vote on other customers, you can add your own ideas, the ones that get the most votes, that are the most popular, or the ones that we think will fit in line with what our vision is for the CRM and the software. They will be put into a future release. So you should see some of your kind of wish list items come through more quickly than the current version that you're on, with the length of time that upgrades take on version 6. So yes, that's a brief introduction of the migration process itself. It would be great to speak to you about getting you guys ready for and having a look at the migration itself, and what that means for you. We'd really be happy to help, so please give our customer success team a call and get it started today, and hopefully we'll see you on some 365 specific webinars about features and when you do migrate. So thank you very much for your time today, and look forward to speaking to you more about the migration in the coming weeks.